Welcome back to another episode of the Delete Kings podcast. I'm your boy, Delete King 850, and I got a very special guest with me tonight. And this one, we're switching it up a little bit. Obviously, we are doing it from the studio, and then we got bed talks. You know what I'm saying? This is going to be super interesting right here. And I'm going to tell you why I chose to work with this guest that I met recently at an event. I'm going to let her introduce herself the right way. What they call you?
My name's Tilly. I make content geared towards men, basically teach them how to have ethical game.
Okay. So, what I was thinking, we met the other week at Content Cartel. Shout out to Melanie King and all that, putting that together. I started following you on Instagram after I seen you was coming to the event that weekend, right? We both know, Content Cartel, Melanie King and all that. And then I noticed your page, something stuck out about it because it's like I typically don't see that type of content on social media. Maybe because my algorithm is all business funding people, whatever credit related stuff. But I sort of started paying attention and I was like, oh, she dropping bombs. It was like more people need to hear what you're about. So explain what you mean by giving game the right way.
There's a lot of men out there who struggle in the attraction department. And there's, a few different ways to deal with that. You can keep just doing what you're doing, or you can learn from a lot of these red pill content type influencers who essentially teach creative manipulation, or you can listen to someone who has experienced things firsthand and knows exactly what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And there's a lot of overlap in terms of things that you can do to be perceived as more attractive with that red pill community. But at the end of the day, these are just tools. So it really just depends on how you use them and your ethics behind that.
100%. Now, that sort of reminds me when I was like when I was a little bit younger and I was tapping into information for how to step my game up as a man. And I did start consuming certain content on the internet where I didn't grow up with a father figure myself. So single mother at the crib. So I didn't really witness like a man treating women the way women should be treated and all that. So I had to teach myself. Right. So I'm consuming a lot of content on the internet and I'm influenced by what I'm influenced by for many years. There's like these different groups and then they all, categorize themselves as like red pill and there's another pill and there's all these pills. And then some people, they're just so strict with it. I could start name dropping all day, but what I'll say is there's barely any women in the space giving game and telling men what to do. So I am curious why you even chose to pick that niche, because I know the way I was consuming the content and what I learned, what helped me, what didn't help me, most of that information was just a lot of alpha male stuff, a lot of stuff that it sounds good on paper, but it's like even some of the people that's preaching that stuff, when they'll have ladies on their podcast, it ain't really like playa. It's more like scolding women or something or talking down on them. I sort of been able to grow up and realize half of that stuff is purely entertainment. And then what really translates to real life, you've really got to go out there in the real world and sort of get your reps in with talking to women and just being a gentleman and doing what makes sense. And most of it, I realized you really got to work on yourself. As a man, that's my take on like listening to advice on the internet when it comes to trying to figure out how to date, how to get more women in your life. I want to know like what gives you that authority? Why'd you even choose that niche to go in that realm?
I mean, that's a great question. It's also a massive question, so I might have to break it down a little bit. As time has gone on and culture has evolved, women are becoming more and more independent and things are shifting in that regard. So now that women no longer rely on men to survive, men are now reevaluating their place in the world. And now that they have, in general, less power over women, they find themselves in sort of like a confusing space where they're feeling powerless. And on top of that, they don't know how to communicate with women. And so they're feeling isolated. And feeling powerless and isolated is a terrible place for anyone to be. And it's really difficult to watch. You know, you have a small minority of people who act out and are hateful or violent as a response. But for the most part, you just have a lot of men who are really well-intentioned, but just don't know where to go or what to do or what their role is. Now that like these binaries and these gender norms are not as stringent as they were before. Seeing that was part of the reason why I felt compelled to get into this space.
Some people would say the whole men approaching women thing, some people say that's getting played out. Females is like, they're not really appreciating men coming up to them, or the catcalling is getting out of hand, or it's just like it's all over the place. I keep seeing all the mixed signals and this and that. Do you really teach any approach game or how to tell men how to not have approach anxiety, or what's your take on men approaching women these days?
I think that it's totally okay to approach people still. I think if you're doing it the right way, it doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, contrary to popular belief. If you approach a woman and you're respectful and you are complimentary and you don't invade her space, it will be well received. Even if she's not interested, she will still appreciate the compliment. She'll probably feel flattered. And if you exit respectfully and create that safe space for her where she's not anxious or fearful, then you had a positive interaction. Even if it didn't go necessarily the way you wanted it to go, it didn't go badly. And then you are rewriting the narrative for women, one person at a time, where she's like, okay, well, this guy went up to me and he was totally respectful. So you're making her rethink whether or not she should be scared if you do it enough in the right way. And I think the main thing in terms of approaching is that you essentially just go into this interaction without expecting anything and without specific intentions other than the intention to connect with someone.
Let me ask you a question. Do you feel like, because you just said, approach without expecting anything. You can have your intentions when you see a pretty girl, want to approach her for whatever reason that's on your mind. But like ultimately, a man shouldn't really be too concerned about the outcome of whatever happen. Do you feel like men and women can be friends? Because that's a big topic.
I think they absolutely can be friends. Unless there is romantic feelings on both sides, then I think they absolutely can. Because if there's romantic feelings on both sides, it's just going to grow until it reaches a boiling point and something happens between them. But if there isn't a romantic connection on both sides, and or there isn't a romantic connection on either side, then it's totally doable. 100%.
So you think
Absolutely.
a man can just be friends with a woman like long term? I guess the right way to ask that question is, so can two attractive people be friends? Because if you ain't feeling her vibes, she ain't got the looks, then it's like, of course, they're both gonna friend zone each other. The attraction is not there. But that's a heavy debate online, because I see these women, they'll hop online and I don't know if they're trolling, but they'll be like, so my best friend of X amount of years, we was joking around, and then he said this joke, or I said a joke, and then he pretty much implied he would hit it if he could. And I'm like, bro. So, for all these females that thinking they're putting guys in a friend zone and, hey, friend, and bro this, bro that, like, but you're an attractive female. Are these females delusional? Do you really genuinely feel like that they can be friends long term?
I think attractive is subjective. Not everyone that you think is attractive is going to be attractive to other people. And that's the case for everyone. There is conventionally attractive. But so if you're saying two people that are attracted to each other, that's different. but also attractive and good looking is also subjective and different from one another. You can be good looking and unattractive, and you can
Oh,
be
okay.
attractive and not necessarily conventionally good looking.
All right, that was slick. That was slick. All right, let me ask you this. Has that situation ever happened to you? Have you ever had a friend, a guy friend, you never thought he would actually try you, but then he tried you and then it changed the dynamic?
No, because I'm very direct and clear. And if I'm not into it and I just want to be friends, that'll be established very early on. And I can always tell. I think that most people can usually tell. I can't speak for everyone. Maybe some people are really, really good at hiding it, but for the most part, they're not. And I think people just choose to believe that's not what's happening. The power of self gaslighting is very strong. A reason why someone might choose to not acknowledge that is because they don't want to lose them as a friend, or they want that kind of attention, but they don't necessarily want the actual romantic side that would generally go with it if they were to acknowledge it.
What's some sort of general advice you can give somebody that wants to start being more seductive? What are some habits or things that he can do? Sort of anything you remember, advice you've given people that really struggled down bad. Like if the worst client of yours came to mind, what's some advice that you've given him to really improve on his seduction game?
It's going to sound very simple, and it is in some ways. The ways of going about doing this are a little bit more long term and tricky, but self confidence is the most attractive quality that you can have. And there's a big difference between being confident and being boastful. Honestly, just existing as someone who is confident in the world is going to set you apart from other people, because a lot of people don't have a lot of self love. And that's where the problems really start, because as soon as someone's walking around and just existing in the world, like, I'm just doing me, I'm just doing my thing, I don't need anyone's approval, and I'm just content. People look at those types of people who value themselves and they're like, wait, who is that? What's their deal? They want to know more. That makes them interested. And interest is a huge factor in attraction. Piquing someone's interest, it's sparking their curiosity is a massive factor. And so if you see someone who kind of stands out in that they're just clearly totally comfortable with themselves, you can see that in their body language. That's automatically attractive. So confidence, I think, is sort of foundation that holds everything else up. But in terms of actually speaking to someone, and I'm sure you get this of all people, if you're out here interviewing people, it's to really listen to what they have to say, not just waiting for your opportunity to speak, but genuinely listening and being interested in what people have to say is going to make them feel special. And attracting people is honestly more about how you make them feel than it is about how you look and how you present yourself.
You sound like really educated on this topic. Did you study psychology? Won't go to school for any of this type of thing, or like I'm still trying to figure out how you became the expert on this.
The reason I got into this was honestly, as a kid, I was so awkward and definitely autistic, which was undiagnosed until I was late 20s. And I always felt different. I always felt like sort of an outcast, bit of a loner. I always struggled to make friends as a kid and even into my young adulthood. So when I say that I understand the loneliness that a lot of men are feeling and the isolation and what that does to a person, like, I get it on a personal level. I was really just, I felt like an alien, and I really just struggled with connecting with people. And connection is so fundamental. It's so important. So ever since I was sort of even able to acknowledge that about myself, I sort of became a little bit obsessed with how to fix it. How do I figure this out? Like, how do I hack peopling. And from there, I just kind of started watching people, analyzing them in a weird clinical kind of way, watching from afar, but then eventually in my own encounters, kind of experimenting and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And it just became my special interest, human beings and what makes them work. And then I grew up a little bit and I grew out of my very awkward phase, not just, socially, but also in my body. And people started perceiving me different. And that gave me enough momentum to want to dive into the seduction aspect of things, right? Because it's cool to be liked, but for whatever reason, more interesting for me, the romantic element. And I think it's maybe just because I am a romantic, but that just became fascinating. And I quickly understood that the key is to kind of get into people's heads and figure out what it is that they really want and what it is that they are lacking in their life, and to be able to bring out the sides of myself that would best reflect those desires. Now, you can go really far off of the deep end with this and just morph into the ideal person for whoever you meet. And I highly recommend to not do that. Because you will lose yourself and you will exist to be perceived by others. But there is sort of a healthy balance there where you understand why people do what they do and why they like what they like and how to best represent yourself to be able to connect with people. So that interest kind of morphed into more of a study. And then I just kind of started getting obsessed with psychology and, the science of likability. So it turned from a personal interest into a more academic interest. And I am just endlessly fascinated with what psychology can tell us about these kinds of things and how to apply it. Then I just at some point realized that I don't know, people just kind of felt comfortable talking to me about things. Enough people started opening up to me that it kind of just snowballed from there. And I found myself in content creation and working with people more officially one-on-one. And here we are.
For sure, for sure. Talk to me about like your one-on-ones. You can't actually give no details, but I mean like when people feel comfortable talking to you, to open up to you, to get advice and to get some better results in their lives. Because you mentioned it's about helping people get what they want. And so you can identify what they want by asking the right questions. I guess my question is like the difference between what you're doing and let's say a therapist or even somebody that's like a couples counselor. How do you identify your role so they don't get you twisted with a regular therapist, couples therapist? You know what I mean?
Well, I don't really work with couples, first of all. And I think what I do is a little bit more specific than what, say, a therapist would do, because most of what I talk about and what I'm interested in is teaching men how to approach women better. It's less about tell me how that makes you feel. And of course, there's always going to be some of that, right? Because I have to understand where you're coming from to know where you want to go. But it's more about formulating a game plan, not to take away from therapy at all. I think therapy is amazing and could be something that people would do in conjunction with what I do. But I think that what I do is I give more actionable steps for people.
Yeah, for sure. Because I was even wondering how much of the advice you're giving deriving from your personal experience and your opinion versus what you've studied, would you say?
That's a good question. I'm not sure that I could really quantify that exactly. I think that I will never say what my experience is the experience of all women. I wouldn't say that to a client or just in general. So whenever I speak about my own experiences or the experiences of other women, I will always preface it that way. And I won't say things with any kind of finality, I guess. Whereas if I'm speaking about a study or some research or things like that, that I can back it up with, then I will speak more definitively. And so, but typically those two things tend to go hand in hand, right? I'll talk about something that I had read, and then I might back it up with a personal experience or just my general feelings on it, because, you know, they're typically in line.
So I think earlier in the conversation we was talking about this space, like the red pill space. Would you say that you're in that category too, or
No.
like completely different?
No, not at all. Not at all. I feel like I'm the antithesis in a lot of ways. But I don't feel like I subscribe to that at all. I think what makes it different is that I come at it from a place of mutual respect rather than domination, from authenticity instead of manipulation. My goal is to give people skills that work long term, because you can use a lot of these pickup artist techniques and they will probably work for you if you use them well, and they'll probably get you laid, but they won't hold in the long term, right? Because you can only maintain a lie for so long until people notice. There's this terrible book that a lot of people have read. It's called The
The
Game.
game.
Have you
Yeah.
heard of it?
I don't think I read it. I might have even, yeah, probably like an audiobook. Maybe the audiobook's on YouTube or something. But then I think one of the characters in that book has a real YouTube channel with the beard. And
Yeah.
like he has his community super successful. They go out, they approach, coach men on getting rid of their approach anxiety, and it's a numbers game. And this guy's super animated. Over the years, I was listening to a lot of his content, and some of the stuff sounded a lot really good on paper. But then, like, there's other people that have come out over time. They're taking the whole approaching women thing like it's a war or something like that, or it's strictly a numbers game or this and that.
Yeah.
I kind of realized that for the most part, nothing's gonna be actually just communicating with people. And I think it's called when you have words that starts with an E. I can't pronounce it, but
Empathy.
yeah, that one.
Yeah.
When you speak to people to listen to them and to actually speak with their interest in mind. But I was influenced by, let's say I was influenced by the wrong people early on. And then slowly I just sort of phased out of it as a grown adult. It's like, yeah, work on myself. Work on myself so I can become something that attracts more people to me. But what were you going to say? Because you were talking about the game and how that pretty much influenced a lot of people.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about the game. I would say first though, you made a really good point about attracting people to you. I think that that's the key differentiation that a lot of people need to make in terms of, you know, seduction and attraction is not about getting people. It's not about getting women. It's not about getting their phone number. It's not about getting them into bed. It's not about even getting into a relationship with women. It's definitely more about being attractive and attracting than, you know, moving towards, right? Having people move towards you versus moving towards them. So in terms of the game, it was really hard to read, but you have to keep your enemies closer, you know? I read it and it's tough. It's tough. This is something that I think influenced a lot of people, and this is where pickup artist culture comes from, and this is where I'm sure a lot of what you were talking about came from, and what you've seen and those types of things. It's dehumanizing to the person. And I think that's part of it. It's like if you dehumanize a person, then you're no longer afraid of them. You're no longer afraid of getting hurt. When it's a numbers game and you just don't care, then yeah, it's easier to approach people, but you're not seeing them as a human being. And if you're not looking at someone as a human being, like you have no chance of starting a healthy relationship with them.
100%. And it's like when it comes down to attracting, like most men will summarize that to just simply say, okay, I'm gonna spend a whole lot of time in the gym and I'm gonna get rich.
Yeah.
What's your general advice to those guys to just be like, I'm gonna just grind, 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 and then one day I'll just make a whole bunch of money, buy a whole bunch of chains and a Lamborghini, and then is that the right way to attract them? Like, is it like are girls really falling for that these days, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that you are going to attract whatever you put out, right? So if you're leading with money, If you're leading with your looks, if you're leading with anything that's superficial, you're going to attract people who value those things above other things. And they're going to have the personality traits to match. So if you're going out there and you're just flexing, and you're going to attract women who value money above other things, versus if you're going out into the world and you're putting your best foot forward and you are leading with empathy and compassion and genuine curiosity, you're going to find people who also do that. Obviously, you're not going to find your perfect person every single time, regardless of how you approach the situation. But generally, you get what you give. Ultimately, those things can change over time. They probably will change. You might not have money forever. You might not have a six-pack forever, whatever it is. But what you can maintain is a solid foundation that you build with someone.
But like, girls be expensive. So it's like, when should a guy even start dating for real? Or at what income level is your opinion? And what's your take on that? Because that is the huge factor in being successful at dating, in my opinion.
In terms of how much income you should be making before you start really getting into dating, I feel like that's an unfair expectation that you have of yourself, and not everyone values that. But I would say you should have an income where you can support yourself. Don't get into a relationship with someone if you can't pay for your own rent, maybe, because then you're going to involve someone else in your financial struggles. They are going to want to help you and support you. And if you can't even support yourself, you're not necessarily in an ideal condition to be getting into a relationship, which is like a two-way street where there has to be support both ways. So I think if you're in absolute financial peril, then maybe it's not the best time to be dating. You know, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have to meet those basic needs, food and shelter, and then you can start moving towards relationships, self-actualization, and all those kinds of things.
Yeah. So would you personally date somebody that makes less than you? That's a popular question right there.
I have a lot, and I would again.
Really?
With the right person.
Okay, damn, that's very...
I'm not about that. I'm not about that. It's difficult for me. I find it very difficult to meet people who have similar values, who are dreamers, romantic.
So you can date potential.
Whatever.
That's what I'm hearing.
No, not necessarily potential. And I don't think you should date for potential. I don't think so. No, not at all. But everyone is evolving all the time.
Right.
You know, we're all reaching towards a higher potential.
But if a guy just ain't got it all together, maybe he might have enough for himself, but he's trying to court you and this and that, and he asks you to split the bill. I mean, like 4 dates in a row. He's like, can you split it? At what point do you expect more of him?
I think it's weird to split the bill. For me, splitting the bill implies two things. One, you're never going to see each other again. Or two, you might see each other again, but it's not going to be for a long time. So for example, maybe if you're going out to dinner with a friend who you see like very rarely, that's when you can split a bill. But apart from that, I think that a courteous thing to do is to take turns, whether it be romantic relationships or otherwise. But I really don't care that much. As long as they're able to support themselves and we're able to do fun things. I mean, going on dates is super important. Doing new and exciting things together is very important to maintaining a healthy relationship. But yeah, I don't have expectations in terms of what the people that I date.
Yeah, you're like 1% of women. I could tell that. Because these women, they have the highest standards nowadays. They just expecting you to just go above and beyond when in the getting to know them phase. But I find that quite interesting for you to say, which even shows you have some sort of authority to coach some people. Because it's like, if that's your take on it, it's not like you can build with somebody. Some girls, they just want to move in when the palace is already built, you know? They don't want to be shooting in the gym, you know? But that is an interesting take. What's your take on men that they not satisfied with like just one woman. What's your opinion on that?
I'm going to roll it back just a little bit here because what you said was interesting, that you think that most women have much higher expectations in terms of what they're expecting financially. My experience is not that at all. And the experience of a lot of women is not that at all. From what I'm hearing, it's women are looking for men who have developed other skills, interpersonal, emotional intelligence type skills. That's a massive part of single women right now. We're just not willing to compromise on that.
Nah, what I'll say is this. My stance on it was more so how the internet feels right now, actually. It's not necessarily my stance on it. That's just what's trending on the timelines where it's like, it's even in the music these days. In the past, it's been like, I have experience. If I were to quote like one example out of a few, it's like, usually I wouldn't have to tell a man to pay my rent or something like that. They would just offer it. It was wild. I don't go out much for the most part, but when I was sort of dating around, trying to figure out what's out here for real, it's not many that had the right mindset, right? Was trying to really connect on a deeper level. Be in a position. For the right one, you're willing to go the extra mile for sure, for sure, for sure. But when I'm telling you that a lot of women, where their head is at, it's not like you. You probably more classy. Do you consider yourself 1% of women?
I wouldn't consider myself classy.
I would just
but
say the word classy for lack of better vocabulary. Like,
I don't know if I would consider myself 1% of women. I think I'm definitely different in a lot of ways, but I think we're all different in a lot of ways. I think that what might set me apart from a lot of other people is I'm extremely inquisitive, and there's very little that I accept in terms of the status quo without question. And so something like dating conventions is something that I've questioned thoroughly, and I have my own thoughts around. But I get what you're saying, and I know that there's definitely part of the population that is like that. And I also think that we have to be careful with how we view our world based on what we see online, because we're all in our little echo chambers. And so once you get into that algorithm of women who are about that, that's what you're going to see, and that's going to change your perspective on what's actually happening. And then when you go out into the world and you meet people and you're viewing them through this lens, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. There was actually this really interesting study that was done on something very similar, where they would tell someone they're introducing them to someone else. And in one case, they would preface by saying this person is nice, thoughtful, kind, whatever. Lots of positive attributes. Then they would do more negative ones. This person is kind of cold, standoffish, whatever. They would meet the same person and they would fill out a form, and that same person would act that same way towards them. And they would collect the data, and it was astounding how much the pretense changed how people saw the person. And it's like that person was acting the exact same way. It's just they already had it in their head that this person was going to be that way. And so two things happen when you go down that route. The first thing is now you're viewing everything from that filter. If it's a negative filter, you're viewing everything from that negative filter. The second thing is that if someone else perceives that they're being perceived through that negative filter, they are also going to act accordingly. And if you say someone is standoffish and cold and whatever, and you're acting like they are going to be that way, then they are going to sense that, and they're going to end up acting cold and standoffish because they're like, you're kind of being a dick.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. I definitely don't put every female in the same category for real. I give them opportunity to just I really just observe. I just notice traits and similarities. It's really deeper than that, because you can think that if your money's running low and that's you're self-conscious about that, and then you're in the dating field really act in a certain way, thinking women are after your money. When it's like you're saying, it's really a little bit more complex than that.
Money represents something more than the physical thing. On the surface, you might think they're after your money, but what people are really after is security. And there's a lot of ways to make people feel secure without involving that. And so it's a tool, but it's just one tool. And, it's an asset, right? It's like it's something you have going for you. So obviously that's going to play a role in what a lot of people perceive as being desirable.
What game can you give to people? Because you just said it. It's about security, and there's different ways for you to make a woman feel secure. That's definitely something I want people to learn on this podcast. Outside of trying to really leverage your money or the fact that you have money, what advice you got on that?
I absolutely love this question, and I have so many things to say on it. There's a lot of ways to make a woman feel secure. I think absolute bottom base level, when you really break it down, chivalry is a great way to make a woman feel secure for two reasons. The first is if you are consistent with those things, you do them every single time, she knows she can count on you. On a very primal level, chivalry is about security. Opening the door, guiding her into a car, walking behind her, walking on a certain side of the road. Those types of things are protective. And that's going to make a woman feel secure and safe. The goal is to make a woman feel safe in any context. And even if it's just someone you're trying to have a casual thing with, the faster that you can make them feel safe and secure, the faster that they are going to be willing to consider you as someone that they might want to have a casual thing with.
Some people say chivalry is dead, but but I do want to ask, because you mentioned chivalry and then you mentioned consistency. Now, I had this conversation recently with somebody, right? Is there such thing as too much chivalry? Like, let's say you live with somebody and every single time you exit the home, you open the door for her. And then when you're going into the car, let's say parking garage, do you get the door for her every single time?
Yes.
Okay. Every single time. Not no once in a while.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay.
100%. It doesn't take very much effort at all. And it's just a way to show your partner consistently that you care about them. I think there's nothing that sucks more than when someone does it every once in a while, or they did it at the beginning, but then they stopped doing it, or they only do it when you're all dressed up and not when you're just going out to get groceries together. I really strongly believe that if you're not going to do it every time, don't bother. Serious, because then it just makes you feel like, well, why aren't you doing it anymore? You used to do this for me. Or why do you only do it when I'm dressed up? Or why do you only do it after we've been together physically? Or, then you're kind of commodifying the act, and you're making it, you're not instilling that safety that okay, I know that every single time I fall, you'll catch me. It doesn't make you feel safe. It doesn't make you feel okay, you're not always going to walk me to my car at night, and something might happen at some point, and I just never know when you are and when you're not going to. I think there's an attractiveness and a loving aspect of reliability that I think is highly underrated. And this is the flip side, is men are allowed to have their own thing. They're allowed to have a thing or a few things that they would like consistently, whatever that might be, those small acts of kindness, those acts of love, those acts of compassion, to want that consistently every single day is totally valid, right? It's not a one-way street.
I'm glad I'm hearing that perspective for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see how many people agree with that for sure. Every single time, because some can view it as, okay, some instances it could be inconvenient. It takes longer to get to where y'all need to go. Like I gotta go to the driver's seat. You gotta go to Pat. We're in a hurry. But going that extra mile, you're saying if it's something serious every single time, which makes sense because you want your breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single time. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, you just made a
Exactly.
decent point. I'm not gonna lie.
Exactly.
I'm gonna see what the people got to say about that one for real. So chivalry is not dead.
No, there's definitely people who are still out there doing that kind of stuff, and they'll do it every single time.
Did you can I ask we can skip this, but like did you witness this growing up in your family household? Like
No, 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 definitely not. No, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of love in my family household. So there wasn't that kind of stuff. This is definitely something that I honestly only experienced much later and specifically started asking for because that's just important to me.
okay, for sure. Yeah, and I know another thing I haven't even factored in, there are different cultures, Nigerians, so like we don't throw around the word I love you. We show it with action. It's definitely an action word. And we might get annoyed if that word is abused, right? Don't say it and not act it out. Like, nah, you gotta show me. You know, some people just abuse that word, this and that. It can almost be a manipulative word sometimes, you know? It's different cultures when that's so I mentioned that in reference to like chivalry and this and that. What are different ways you can show a woman that you care, maybe taking care of everything? A guy in his mind could think, oh, well, I do XYZ. When is enough or whatever, but it's just like going the extra mile. It could have some benefits that the guy's not even really factoring in based off of his own bias, pretty much. But
But I wanted to actually come back to a point that you made about how saying I love you in Nigerian culture is it's different and it's really about showing love. I find that it's kind of beautiful because we're basically saying the same thing. Those small chivalrous acts are just ways of showing love, you know, and or whatever your thing is. Like maybe you have a different thing that makes you feel loved and you those small consistent acts or those small inconsistent acts or whatever, like it's literally just about making the other person feel valued, special, and loved and secure within that love. Like that love isn't just going to disappear on them. And so that's going to take on different forms for different people and different cultures, but the same thing is true across humankind is we all want to be loved, and that's just shown to us in different ways.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wrap this up with this
Okay.
one more question. Guys, y'all tune into the channel. Y'all see I bring up a little bit of everything because sometimes I might want to have a conversation to learn a little bit more about myself. But this is definitely information that I think the world needs to know. It's not just finance, it's mentality and all of that stuff, which we bring into the table, how we can become better men. But ultimately, I want you to sort of touch on attention. When a man dealing with a woman wants all that attention. Let's say you're dealing with somebody, and I kind of hinted the question earlier. If his attention goes to another female, even briefly or temporarily, how should the woman deal with that?
What do you mean when you say attention?
Right. Because that could be a few different things, right? Let's say a man just talking to other women, engaging in long form conversations with other women.
Are they flirtatious conversations?
Not necessarily. Maybe that guy, maybe that's just his vibe. Maybe he comes off as not nice, but like maybe he's an attractive man. Maybe he's just gives off that energy. So the conversation might seem that way, but it's really just not that deep. You still, you know, are going to communicate with the opposite sex outside of your situation, right?
Right.
So how you do that? I guess I'm asking, how do you do that respectfully if you genuinely come off as flirtatious, but maybe that wasn't even your intention. So I'm asking, how do the girls really supposed to deal with that? And same for the guys. If they're dealing with the girl that might make her feel unsafe if his attention is going to another female in general.
There's two parts. One of it's intention, and the other part is the rules of engagement. Let's start with the basics here. Like, I think it's important, even for people who are monogamous, to have conversations around boundaries, like what they're comfortable with, what they're not comfortable with, to actually say them out loud. Because I think too often people get into relationships and it's just all assumed. You start dating, are going on several dates, you're like, I really like you. And at that point, you're like, well, now feels like the time I should delete the apps. And then you're like, want to be my girlfriend or whatever. And that's when it's implied that you guys are just no longer seeing anyone else. And then, you know, there's a lot of rules that people kind of just accept as sort of Bible, but that are never discussed. There's also a lot of people who exploit those rules and say, well, they were never discussed. So like, oh, well, I know we've been seeing each other for 6 months, but we never put a label on it. So I thought it was fine, even though you know that they're not cool with that. So I think it's really important to actually establish from the very beginning what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with. Avoid putting rules on someone. Instead, frame it as like a personal boundary. So a personal boundary is like, I'm not comfortable with this. A rule is more so, I don't want you to do this. And so figuring out exactly where you're at is key. And then the other part is your intention when you are doing these things, when you're talking to other women, like, what is your intention behind that? How are you speaking to them? I think that it's very, very, very obvious when a man is trying to flirt with you versus like when a man is talking to you and he has a girlfriend who he is committed to and only has eyes for. And I've personally felt that. And it's a massive distinction. I've had full-on conversations with men who are just like, you know what I mean? And it's like, you know, he's nice and he's polite and he's whatever, but I'm like, he's giving me absolutely no signals, right? Versus I've had situations where I've met even friends' boyfriends who it was just instantly looking at me, and I knew that he was that type of guy who would push those boundaries, the type of guy who was going to flirt with other women and do things that his girlfriend wouldn't be okay with. So it really depends on the intention, right? So if you have no intention of being flirtatious, of having an emotional affair, of doing any of those kinds of things with another person, then you are fine to talk to other people. You don't need permission from your partner to talk to people of the opposite sex. That's controlling. Just as they should, you know, have the same freedoms, right? Like they should be able to talk to other people, and you have to just trust that their intentions are what they say they are. If someone hasn't done anything to deserve mistrust, if they haven't shown you any actions that would indicate that they are untrustworthy, then they should be trusted by default until proven otherwise. Because if not, that's your own stuff and you need to work through that.
Dang, that was a loaded question, but you mastered the answer. Like, cause that I was able to follow along, and I feel like everything you said makes sense. For real.
Yeah.
It probably boils down to if that person did anything to betray that person's trust, then it's like, are they always on edge about when's the next time they're gonna, you know, cross that line or that boundary, like you put it.
I have a question for you as well. But I feel like I'm a very different type of guest than maybe other people you've had on. What made you decide to go in that direction?
Because one, I bring on a lot of people that I meet in specific environments. There was something about your page that I don't know as to why I started watching your content. I was like, this is just different. It's like completely different hearing what you're talking about coming from a female. Now, I've had people on talking about whether they're sort of in the same space, credit, funding, taxes, a little bit of everything, mostly entrepreneurs. So it was really your subject matter to really diversify my content. because one, I did take your quiz as well. I didn't really bring it up,
Yeah, we didn't talk
but
about that yet.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I came up as the lone wolf or whatever. Like, all right, cool. We gotta
Hmm.
figure out what that means, right? I always look for opportunities to learn about myself and to find out things that I don't already know. So that's the type of people I'm gonna get on my platform to get a chance to ask some questions that I'm super curious about. Like I'm always curious. I'm just a curious person, to be honest with you. So yeah,
It's a
it's
great quality.
definitely, you said what?
It's a great quality.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm definitely curious. Part of it is like I had a intuition, like there's something that she knows that I want to find out. I'm not really trying to date, I'm not really out here looking for advice, but I was curious about stuff that I do wrong, like chivalry. Like chivalry, even based off conversations that I've had recently. I had a feeling you might be able to have some answers. So that was like a gut feeling for real.
The chivalry thing, that's kind of where is a perfect example of where the science and my own opinion kind of merge together. Like, not every woman has that expectation of chivalry. It's not going to be important to every woman. But you said earlier, communication is important to you. So I think the most important thing is to either observe or communicate and have a conversation and like, hey, what makes you feel special? What makes you feel like warm and fuzzy inside? What makes you feel safe? And what's something that I can do for you that would just make you happy? And so it might not be chivalry, it might be something else. I mean, it's a conversation you can have with someone.
Yeah. Ultimately, I have this obsession of just becoming the best version of myself. So I look for answers. That's all it is for sure. And I'm always take that opportunity to share that with my platform, my audience, the people that can relate. I don't know how many podcasts you have done, but I feel like you're blowing up. Whether you become a best-selling author or something in the future, I have the opportunity to catch it a little early. That was part of it, just being honest. And definitely want to understand women a little bit better because I'm a man. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm always trying to sharpen up my skills. So I want to hear it from a female's aspect. But yeah, the lone wolf. I don't know if we're gonna wrap it up on that, but
Totally. Yeah, we can if you want.
so it's like I took the quiz, and by the way, you guys can, for as long as she has that link in her bio, welcome to my bed talk. Super clever name, right? So welcome to my bedtalk.com. If you guys go to welcome to my bed talk on Instagram, where you guys can follow her, you might see a link in the bio depending on what time you're watching this, right? And you can take the quiz, and my results came out as the lone wolf, which I can relate for many, many years. Definitely a lone wolf, definitely not a follower in any sense. Like literally, I can watch people have fun. Go do your thing. It's cool. Like people watch. How would you define it? Because I could read it, but you can definitely break it down. What would you tell me about myself?
Personality quiz is basically designed to give you an idea of what is keeping you single. Your results is the lone wolf. A lot of that's tied into comfort, routine, and valuing your own peace and not wanting to have someone come in and disrupt your peace, and consistency and calmness in their life. A lot of times it's people who feel like they can't necessarily fully rely on others and they can't fully trust others. And so instead of putting their trust in others, they just kind of sit back and say, I'd rather be alone. There's nothing inherently wrong with that until you start to feel lonely and like you want that kind of connection. These are people who have just created safe spaces for themselves by self-isolating and convincing themselves that the chances of them actually meeting someone that they'll get along with, someone that they could actually trust, are so slim that I'm not even gonna really try looking.
I can relate to a lot of that. As of now, I grew up, but few years ago, I can identify with a lot of what you just said. It got to a point where it's like, I'm gonna just work on myself. I'm a build. I'm gonna just lock in. I ain't gonna be hanging out at the bar trying to find somebody. My homies will invite me to the clubs and all that. I'm cool. And then, yeah, you said it like, man, people are unreliable. Now, for the people that's watching, for the audience, if they take this quiz and they identify and they can relate, just to round off this conversation, just a little freebie, because there's different types. There's different outcomes you can take from taking this quiz, but let's just say for this one, if they do want to end up with somebody, not single, and just get that desired outcome, what's some gems you can leave the people with?
So for this specific one, for the lone wolf, I think that a lot of the time, these types of people tend to focus pretty heavily on just certain aspects of their life, whether it be physical fitness, whether it be work or their faith, whatever it is. Like people tend to hyper focus on other aspects of their life and they get really stuck in their own routines. So I think that something that's valuable for these types of people, if they do want to actually meet people, is to broaden their horizons in terms of their environment. And the example that I give on the quiz, if that's the result that you end up getting, is if you have routines, basically stack on top of those routines. If you have a home gym, to start doing activities that incorporate other people and to not go into those activities with expectations of meeting people and like meeting women specifically and having romantic connections. Switching out your gym routine for like a workout class, for example, where it's more normal to be interacting with people, or to switch out just chilling at home reading for a book club, or anything that you enjoy doing that aligns with the type of people that you're looking to meet or that you're looking to surround yourself with. Like, for example, going to Miami to a networking event for entrepreneurs. You're more likely to meet people there that about what you're about versus going to the club where people are going there to get drunk, not to meet the love of their life, right? Just doing things that represent the positive aspects of who you are and just making small changes in your routine to switch things out for a more social thing. And then go into those social things open, but not thirsty.
100%. 100%. On that note, we got a lot more coming. Financial literacy and emotional intelligence. I really feel like the emotional intelligence aspect of it is like what I'm bringing to the table with this conversation. Genuinely, that's where I'm coming from. Like, let's think outside the box. We dropping a lot more content. And yeah, you guys gonna see a lot more different stuff. It's not gonna be the same topic. I am ultimately a content creator. My favorite subject just happens to be business funding, where I help people get access to capital and get over six figures and get an 800 credit score. Y'all know what to do for the links in the bios and all of that stuff and how to follow me and get in touch. So all that, Delete King 850 on Instagram. Where can the people really connect with you? You can let them know where you want them to follow you and all that.
My username is the same across all platforms, but you'll get the best content on Instagram. I post every single day. Welcome to my bed talk, one word, like TED Talks. And then welcome to mybedtalk.com. I have a guide that I wrote where I break down tons of what we talked about and way more. And it's all in one info-packed place and broken down into different sections. I cover everything from appearance to body language to like how to approach women in public, where to meet women, mindset around confidence, going out on dates to the first kiss. All those things are covered in my guide, and that one is available on my website as well.
For sure. It was dope and I was getting late, but yeah. I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. Make sure y'all tune in to the next one. Peace.
Thank you for having me.
For sure.